The first thing you need to know before you create a move is, what is a move? While this may sound like a very basic question, there is actually a lot that can be said. A lot of beginners, including myself, start creating moves without understanding the general basic structure of a move, and that could result in you spending a lot of time creating mediocre material. Fully understanding the structure of a move can help you go a long way. It will make your moves more pleasant to watch and easier to understand. It will also provide you with clear objectives and set patterns that could speed up the process of creating each move. So with that said, let's get into it. The basic structure of a move consists of an opener, the build-up, the climax, and the closer. Of course, not every move will have such clearly defined stages. The build-up and the climax could also be harder to separate for shorter moves. And sometimes the climax could even be the opener or the closer itself. But you can consider this more of a general guideline that applies to most moves. So let's take a more in-depth look at each part using the 5 faces of Sibyl as an example. So on top of the screen we have a slow motion of the 5 faces of Sibyl, and we will identify each part in the bottom. So here's the opener. It is the beginning of each move and usually describes the part of the move where the deck is split into multiple packets. Then, as the packets begin moving, we enter the build-up, which is usually the process of setting up the climax. This part is the least essential of the 4 moves and is sometimes omitted if the creator can find a clever and fast way to move directly from the opener to the climax. Then we have the climax. This part should be fairly easy to identify, as it generally reveals the purpose of the move and is the point where you should go, wow. If it is a good move, that is. So for Sibyl, that would be this 5-packet display over here. Finally, we have the closer, which is just a process of bringing the packets or cards back together to a fully squared deck. Now, let's take a look at another example that isn't a 2-hand packet cut. We'll be using my move, Parallax, as an example. Now that you guys know how to identify each of these parts of a move, we want to show you guys some of our favorite openers, climax, and closers. So you guys can see that even though these parts, especially the opener and closer, are supposed to fulfill a clear objective, there are still lots of possibilities. So those were a couple of our favorite openers, climax, and closers. Before ending this video, we want to discuss a more abstract concept, which is the purpose of the move. While the purpose of a move is not something you can necessarily physically identify for each move, it is something that every move should have. We briefly mentioned this while discussing the climax because the climax usually reveals the purpose of the move. But sometimes the purpose of the move is not a single part of the move and cannot be easily identified. It could be a theme, a constraint, or even just the flow of the move itself. So here are a couple of examples where that is the case. So with this move, you can see that there is not a single point in the move that you can easily identify as the purpose, but the move itself has a very clear theme, and hence a purpose. Similarly, with this second move here, you can see that there is not a single point in the move that stands out as the purpose, but the purpose is instead the whole flow of the move from start to finish. And now that you have a good understanding of the structure of a move, we can move on to answer the question of what makes a move good in our next tutorial.